UN Secretary-General has called on the international community to work together to fight the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Bolivian social movements will present complaints against the de facto government to the UN Human Rights Council. Political parties in Guyana are wrapping up their campaigns ahead of general elections on Monday. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. Mexico confirmed the country's first and second case of the COVID-19 virus on Friday. Undersecretary for Health Hugo Lopez-Gatell reported that one of the patients is isolated at the National Institute of Respiratory Diseases in Mexico City, while the other is in the northern state of Sinaloa, and neither is seriously ill. The secretary also explained that one of the patients had contact with someone who had travelled to the northern Italian region at the heart of Europe's largest outbreak of the virus. Tests are also being conducted on a 28-year-old American woman who remains under observation in a hospital in Mexicali to determine whether she was infected by the coronavirus during a trip to several European countries.
We are ready to face the coronavirus situation. We have the doctors, we have the specialists, we have the hospitals, and the capability to confront the coronavirus situation.
And Undersecretary Hugo Lopez-Gatell stressed that the confirmation of cases of coronavirus in the country should not be regarded an emergency.
Influenza is an endemic disease in the Northern Hemisphere, including Mexico. Therefore, there is no reason whatsoever for it to be regarded as an emergency situation in the country.
Brazil's Executive Secretary of the Ministry of Health, João Gabado dos Reis, explained on Friday that 132 suspected cases of the new coronavirus have been detected in the country. The majority have been reported in Sao Paulo city, while 85 patients remain under observation. Nigeria confirmed its first case of the COVID-19 virus in Abuja on Friday. The patient is an Italian citizen who flew in from Milan earlier this week. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, with some 190 million people, is viewed as one of the world's most vulnerable to the spread of the virus, given its weak health system and high population density.
The case is that the Federal Ministry of Health has confirmed a coronavirus disease case in Lagos, Nigeria, known as COVID-19. The case was confirmed on the 27th of February 2020 and is the first to be reported in Nigeria since the beginning of the outbreak in China in January 2020. We have started working to identify all the contacts of the patient since he entered Nigeria, and even those who were with him on the aircraft.
The Iranian parliament has suspended its sessions due to the spread of the coronavirus in the country, where several top officials have been infected. On Thursday, it was announced that Masoumeh Ebteka, Iran's Vice President for Women and Family Affairs, tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. Deputy Health Minister Iraj Harichi and lawmaker Mahmoud Sadeghi were also diagnosed the previous day. The death toll in Iran has increased to 34, as confirmed by a Ministry of Health spokesperson on Friday. The country has reported 388 cases of infection. Lebanon's Education Ministry on Friday announced the closure of all schools until March 8th as a precautionary measure against the spread of the coronavirus. The announcement came as the country's fourth case of the virus was confirmed. The patient is a Syrian national isolated at a Beirut hospital. Lebanon's first 3 coronavirus cases were linked to passengers arriving on flights from Iran, which has seen the highest number of deaths from the virus outside China. Lebanon has since halted flights for non-residents from countries with confirmed outbreaks, including China, Iran, Italy and South Korea, according to the Transport Ministry. At least 83,991 cases of coronavirus have been confirmed worldwide, the vast majority of which in China. The death toll in mainland China now stands at 2,835. The UN Health Agency highlighted on Friday that China's strategy has averted or at least delayed hundreds of thousands of cases and played a significant role in protecting the global community. And Chinese President Xi Jinping discussed the ongoing COVID-19 epidemic as well as the promotion of bilateral ties in a telephone conversation with Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel. Xi noted that after the outbreak of the coronavirus, President Díaz-Canel and Raúl Castro, first Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba, immediately extended their condolences for the deaths, while the Cuban president also paid a special visit to the Chinese embassy in Havana to express support for China. Meanwhile, Díaz-Canel said Cuba highly appreciates and firmly supports China's efforts to combat the COVID-19 epidemic and also thanks the country for providing help and treatment to Cuban nationals in China. And the World Health Organization has raised its assessment of the global coronavirus risk from high to very high, the most serious assessment in its new 4-stage alert system.
Continued increase in the number of cases and the number of affected countries over the last few days are clearly of concern. Our epidemiologists have been monitoring these developments continuously, and we have now increased our assessment of the risk of spread and the risk of impact of COVID-19 to very high at global level. What we see at the moment are linked epidemics of COVID-19 in several countries, but most cases can still be traced to known contacts or clusters of cases. We do not see evidence as yet that the virus is spreading freely in communities. As long as that's the case, we still have a chance of containing this virus if robust action is taken to detect cases early, isolate and care for patients, and trace contacts. In the past 24 hours, China reported 329 cases, the lowest in more than a month. As of 6 a.m. Geneva time this morning, China has reported a total of 78,959 cases of COVID-19 to WHO, including 2,791 deaths. Outside China, there are now 4,351 cases in 49 countries and 67 deaths. Since yesterday, Denmark, Estonia, Lithuania, Netherlands and Nigeria have all reported their first cases. All these cases have links to Italy. 24 cases have been exported from Italy to 14 countries, and 97 cases have been exported from Iran to 11 countries.
And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, referring to the COVID-19 virus this Friday, attempted to reassure the international community and urged preparation to counter the spread of the epidemic.
You did. As WHO Director General Dr. Tedros said, the greatest enemy right now is not the virus, it is fear, rumors and stigma. Now it's the time for all governments to step up and do everything possible to contain the disease, and to do so without stigmatization and respecting human rights. We know containment is possible, but the window of opportunity is narrowing. Today, the World Health Organization raised the risk assessment of COVID-19 to very high at the global level. We are seeing cases in a number of new countries, including now also the African continent. This is not a time for panic. It's a time to be prepared, fully prepared.
Coming up after this break, the Venezuelan Vice President began an official visit to Qatar this Friday. Stay with us for more. Welcome back. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez began an official visit to Qatar this Friday. The Venezuelan Foreign Ministry announced on its Twitter account that the Vice President had arrived in Qatar to strengthen bilateral relations and cooperation as part of the diplomacy of peace promoted by the Venezuelan government. Meanwhile, the Vice President stated that on undertaking the trip, she was following the path of Commander Hugo Chavez, which is today consolidated by President Nicolas Maduro. Mexico says it will demand that the Organization of American States clarify the flaws in its report on the October general elections in Bolivia, which led to the coup against President Evo Morales. The announcement came after a report published on Wednesday by the Washington Post concluded that the claims of photo fraud by the OAS appear to be deeply flawed. Researchers say there's no reason to suspect there was photo fraud during the elections, as claimed by the de facto government, which forced Morales to resign. Colombia's Common Alternative Revolutionary Force Party denounced the assassination of yet another former guerrilla. The party reported that the assassination of Holman Fabio Montes Sanchez occurred in the municipality of San Vicente del Caguan in the south of the country. Montes is the 14th former guerrilla killed this year. Since the signing of the 2016 peace deal between the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia People's Army and the Colombian state, a total of 186 former guerrilla fighters have been killed. A report by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights described 2019 as the most violent year for former FARC combatants. The Executive Secretary of the Bartolina Sisa National Federation of Peasant Women of Bolivia, Segundina Flores, announced that Bolivia's main social movements will denounce the de facto government at the Human Rights Council in Geneva.
Because there's no justice or right in this country, we have to resort to international law. In this regard, our organization will travel to Geneva in March to file a complaint before the Human Rights Council.
Chile's Minister of Education, Marcela Cubillos, resigned from her position on Friday, just 2 days before the start of the new school year. According to the president of the Chilean Teachers Association, Mario Aguila, the move comes following an agreement by the union's National Assembly calling for her resignation. Aguila said the minister was an obstacle rather than a contribution to advancing educational matters in Chile. The position will be filled by Education Undersecretary Raúl Figueroa. President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, stressed on Friday the will of the Cuban population to resist the aggressions of the United States in the face of new restrictions on remittances to the Caribbean island. Díaz-Canel described Washington's decision as another attack against the Cuban people after the suspension of global money transfers to Cuba through Western Union, except those issued from the United States. Former Minister Bruno Rodriguez also stated that this measure responds to the US interventionist policy that violates the sovereignty of third states and reinforces the extraterritorial nature of the blockade, which harms Cuban families. The Costa Rican prosecutor's office opened an investigation into President Carlos Alvarado for the illegal use of confidential information. As part of the investigation process and in an unprecedented move, members of the prosecutor's office raided the residence of the sitting president. The legal body said that both President Alvarado and a group of officials are under investigation for possible violations of personal data and abuse of authority. Social organizations have stated that this action demonstrates the weakness of the current government and called for a cabinet overhaul. And our correspondent in Costa Rica, Fernando Francia, has the latest on the case against the president.
The search of the president's residence has to do with a body called the Presidential Data Analysis Unit, or UPAD. This was set up over a year ago, but it came to public attention this month when it published an official decree, which a number of citizens and political parties have criticized for being full of inconsistencies. They say that the private information of citizens may have been used for political analysis by the presidency. President Alvarado himself says this unit has sought information in different ministries and public institutions to help draw up effective public policies. But the critics say the use of such personal information is illegal. So that is why the prosecutors have begun this investigation, which includes the president himself. Either way, this is the first time in Costa Rica that prosecutors have raided the house of a serving president.
Political parties in Guyana are preparing for their final rallies ahead of the general elections on Monday. On Thursday night, the main contenders made a last-ditch attempt to secure votes.
But untrustworthy, totally dishonest. That is Granger for you. Granger only talks about these big things like decade of development, green state economy. He has no achievement to speak about, no plans for the future. Look at our manifesto by contrast, and I urge each of you to read it, because every single sector, we have very, very specific plans that we will start to implement as soon as we take office. From education to healthcare, to housing, to water, everything. So comrades, the choices are clear, but even if you need more convincing, and I'm sure that you don't need that here tonight, just look at the approach to oil and gas, how these people are so incompetent and possibly corrupt.
And the elections in Guyana come at the end of a long political crisis, which began with a vote of no confidence in the government back in 2018. The issue of oil also forms part of this crisis. More details in the following report.
It was back in 1999 that Guyana's government dished out concessions to explore for oil to the US oil giant ExxonMobil. After David Granger came to power in 2015, ExxonMobil stepped up its exploration in waters off the Essequibo, a region that's in dispute with Venezuela. Granger says the deal with the US company will bring big benefits to Guyana. But others aren't so sure. The group Global Witness estimates that Guyana is losing $55 billion as a result of the terms of its agreement with ExxonMobil, which clearly benefit the US oil company more than the country. It was in this situation that the opposition leader Bharat Jagdeo in December 2018 presented before the Guyanese parliament a motion of no confidence in the government of David Granger. He accused them of misusing the oil revenue. Members of parliament from the opposition People's Progressive Party, or PPP, naturally voted for the motion, while members of the governing coalition opposed it, except that one lawmaker from the ruling coalition, Charandas Persad, voted with the opposition. That gave them the 33 votes they needed to pass the motion of no confidence in Granger's government. A long and messy political and legal dispute ensued. Finally, on the 25th of September last year, Granger finally announced general elections for this 2nd of March, the date he'd agreed with Guyana's Election Commission.
And after this final break, we'll take a look at elections in 2 African countries. Don't go away. Welcome back. And we begin in Africa, where the Togolese government banned a peaceful demonstration in the capital convened for this Friday to reject the 4th re-election of President Faure Gnassingbe following elections last Saturday. On Thursday afternoon, former Prime Minister Dr. Abayomi Mesankojo, one of the 2020 presidential candidates, assured members of his party and other supporters that the demonstration would still be held as planned. The main opposition party claimed fraud following the release of the provisional results by the National Independent Electoral Commission on Monday. The protesters planned to march peacefully on Friday afternoon and rally outside the French embassy. The African Union announced on Friday that it was recalling a team sent to observe a constitutional referendum and legislative elections in Guinea on Sunday due to fears of violence. In a statement, the African Union cited major controversy surrounding the country's electoral register and the impossibility of the Economic Community of West African States conferring with President Alpha Condé ahead of the high-stakes vote. The European Union has also voiced its concern.
To delays and alleged manipulation of the electoral register.
Israeli forces attacked occupied territories in the West Bank, Jerusalem and Gaza on Friday. At least 40 Palestinians, including a teenager, were injured during the clashes with Israeli forces in the West Bank city of Nablus. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society confirmed the casualties, reporting that they included a 16-year-old who was wounded in the back with live bullets. 15 people were also treated with rubber bullet injuries, and there were 24 cases of asphyxia due to tear gas fired by Israeli forces. The international medical humanitarian organisation Doctors Without Borders has accused Italian authorities of enforcing discriminatory quarantine measures against a ship rescuing migrants at sea under the pretext of the novel coronavirus. Doctors Without Borders, which operates the Ocean Viking rescue ship, has announced that the vessel has been anchored off Sicily for nearly 5 days, following the disembarkation of 276 people rescued at sea. The humanitarian NGO maintains that the crew have complied with all measures and that none of the team have reported any symptoms of the virus. However, Italian authorities have yet to lift the quarantine order. Michael Fark, head of the mission for search and rescue in the Mediterranean, has said that quarantining the Ocean Viking is equivalent to stopping an ambulance in the middle of an emergency. The Greek islands of Lesbos and Chios saw a general strike on Friday to protest against central government plans to build migrant detention centres there. Clashes between protesters and police erupted during the mobilisations. The government intends to begin works on the new camp in March in order to transfer refugees and asylum seekers in the summer. The Greek islands have received tens of thousands of people fleeing conflict and poverty in the Middle East, Africa and Asia. Long delays in the asylum process and increased migrant flows have led to severe overcrowding in the existing migrant camps. And finally, China is making unremitting efforts to win the battle against poverty this year, even in the face of the coronavirus outbreak. Hu Chuanhua, a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China, urged to prioritise recruitment into the labour force of poverty-stricken sectors of the population, including support for industries and families falling back into poverty due to the epidemic. A total of 17 new counties in northern China's Shaanxi province have been removed from the country's list of impoverished counties as efforts continue to eradicate poverty.
Has turned Guayana into a tourist attraction since the 1990s.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.